Hello everyone, today we're gonna build this nice and simple to-do application using Vue. Basically, you can create a new task, you can delete task, you update task, and also change the status of the task. First, I will create the HTML and CSS, then I'll add the Vue functionalities. If you get stuck at any time during this tutorial, you can check out the completed source code on my GitHub. I will add the link in the description. Before we get started, I just want to say that this is my first video and I'll do my best to make it as good as possible. It will mean a lot if you subscribe to the channel and also comment and tell me if you found this video useful. Alright, let's get started. So I'm gonna assume that you already have Node and Vue installed on your machine. If you don't, make sure to install them first. I will add a link for the Vue installation page in the description. Alright, let's create a new project named todo app. Let's go with the default preset and I'll get back to you once the installation is finished. Okay, so now the project is created. Let me just open VS Code. First, let's go over the file structure real quick. The entry point of our Vue application is index.html file, which is located in the public folder. Notice that we have a div tag with ID up here. This is basically where our Vue application will be injected. And if we go to main.js, you will see that we are importing two files here, Vue and app.vue. Here we are initializing the root Vue component, which is app.vue, to the div tag with ID up on our index.html page. Okay, let's go to our root Vue component, which is app.vue. Notice here that Vue imported an example component for us named hello world. But we don't actually need this component, so let's delete everything inside the main div tag. Let's delete the styling too. And let's rename the hello world.vue component to todo-app.vue. Just make sure to change the import name and the register component name to todo-app. Let's add our todo-app component inside the main div tag. And open the todo-app file and delete everything inside the main div tag. Delete the class name. And we don't need the styling, so delete the styling too. Let's add hello world text inside our div tag just to check if everything works properly and start the server. To start the development server, just type npm run serve. It says that it has compiled successfully and we can open this local link. As expected, we only have hello world on our page. Let me just divide the screen real quick. Okay, now I'll install Bootstrap just to speed up the styling. For that, just run npm install bootstrap. And we also need to import the CSS file in our main.js file. Okay, let's get back to todo-app.vue. Add a container class to our main div tag. And inside the div tag, I'll add h2 tag with text my Vue todo app. I will center the text and add margin top. Now let's create our inputs. For this, I will create a div tag with divFlex class. And inside our div tag, let's create an input with type text, class from control, and placeholder enter text. And create a button with class button warning and rounded 0 to remove the border radius, and the button text will be submit. Looks great. So now we need to create a table for our tasks. For that I will use bootstrap table, so let's go over to the bootstrap table page. Scroll down and find the border table. Copy the entire code and paste it in our to-do app.vue. Let's just quickly rename the table headers to name, status, and add 2 hash symbols for the third and fourth column name, which will be for our edit and delete buttons. Let's just center them to make it look better. Scroll down and delete the last 2 rows because we only need 1. Let's just change the HTML tag. And let's add 1 task, steal bananas from the store. Let's see how this looks on our page. Cool. Let's just add margin top. Also change this value. And for the icons, we will use font awesome icons. For that, go to Google and type install font awesome in Vue and open this page. I will also add the link for this page in the description. Scroll down and copy this line. And while font awesome is installing, let's include the required JavaScript files and CSS files in our main.js file. Let's get back to to-do app file, and I will create 2 icons, one for editing and one for deleting. And I will also center the icons. And let's see how this looks on our page. Fantastic. So we finish implementing the HTML and CSS for our to-do application. Let's start working on the Vue functionalities. The first thing that we will do is replace the hard-coded task with an array of tasks. Scroll down and create a data function which should return an object. And in this object we will define our data that we are going to use in this component. For our task, for example, we need an array of objects. So let's create a property named tasks, which will be an array of objects, and inside the objects we will have a name property and status property. For the first object I will create a task steal bananas from the store, which will have a to-do status. And for the second object I will create a task eat 1 kilo chocolate in 1 hour, with status in progress. Very constructive tasks for brighter future. And now that we have our array of objects, we want to display the tasks in our table. So we want to create a row for each object. To do that we need a for loop. In Vue we can use the v-for directive. For this to work you just need to specify the source data and an alias for the current element. In our case it will be v-for equals task in tasks, where tasks is the source data array and task is the alias for the array element that is being iterated. We also need the index of the iterated item, so let's add the index in our for loop like this. So basically you can access the task object and the index of the task object. When using v-for, it is recommended to bind a key which should be unique value for each iteration, like id or index. This will give you a hint so that it can track each node's identity and reuse and reorder existing elements. Just remember that the value of the key should be string or numeric value, and it should be unique. So now that we are looping through our task array, we can access each object like the following. This will inject the task name in our HTML. Let's do the same for status. And as you can see in our table, we are actually reading the data from our task array. So now we want to implement the functionality for adding new tasks. To do that, we need to add a click event to our button, which will call a method named submit task, which I will create right now. So the methods in Vue are placed inside the methods object like this. For now, we only have the submit task method, and let's console log a string just to see how this works. So now if I open my console and click on the submit button, I should get the string from the console log. Great. Now we need to get the value from our text input. To do that, create a task property which will be an empty string. And now we can bind this property to our input using a vModel directive. vModel is used to create two-way data bindings on input, text area, and select elements. This means that our input and task property will have the same value. If you change the input value, the property value will be changed also. And the reverse is true. If you change the property value, the input value will be changed also. As you can see, I've assigned a hello world string to our task property, and if I refresh the page, you can see that the input value is hello world. Now let me just console log this task. And as you can see, when we change the input value, the value of these tasks changes also. Perfect. Okay, so let's remove the hello world text and continue working on our submit task method. So first of all, when the submit button is clicked, we want to make sure that the user enters something in the input field. To do that, we can check the length of the task property, and if it's equal to 0, just return nothing. You can implement error messages if you like, but I'm gonna leave it like this. And now we want to push the new task to our tasks array. So this tasks push, and we need to push an object with name and status property. The name will be equal to this task property, and the status will always be to do for new tasks. Alright, let's test it out. Cool, works good. Now we will implement the delete functionality. So let's go up and add a click event on our div tag. And we will call a method named delete task, which will take one argument index, so we could know which task should be deleted. Let's create the delete task method. And to remove the task object from our tasks array, we may use the splice function. We pass two arguments. The first is the index, which is an integer and specifies the position to remove or add items. And the second argument is also an integer, which specifies how many items we want to delete starting from that index. So we want to delete only one item from our array. Let's see if this works. Great. Let's just clear the input field when we submit a new task. To do that, just add this task equals empty string at the end of our submit task method. And let's test that out. Cool. So the delete method is working as expected. And now let's implement the edit method. So same as with delete, let's add a click event to our div tag. And when the user clicks on the pen icon, we will call the edit task method. Let's create this method. So basically, when the user clicks on the pen icon, we need to add the value of the task to our input field. To do that, just write this task equals this tasks from index.name. Let's test it out. Works as expected. The only thing that we are missing is the actual update of the task. So now if we click the submit button, it will not update the task, but it will create a new one, and we don't want that. Let's create a new property named edit task, which will have a value of null. And basically when the user clicks on the edit icon, we will set this property to the index of the click task. And now we can go to our submit task method and add a condition which will check if the user wants to create a new task or update an existing one. So if this edited task is equal to null, we know that the user did not click the edit button. That means the user wants to create a new task. And we can just add else here and change the value of the edited tasks like this. And when the value changes, we just need to set edited task back to null. Let's see if this works. Let's edit this task, change the value and click submit, and the value of our tasks changed. Let's try to add a new task now. This one works too. Okay, so we've added all CRUD operations. The only thing left is to make the status updatable. For that, let's create an array named available statuses with 3 elements: to do, in progress, and finish. Basically all available statuses in order. We will use this array as a helper to change the status of the clicked status. So if the user clicks on to do status, we want to update the status to in progress, and if the user clicks on a in progress status, we will update it to finished. And just to add the option to reset, when the user clicks on the finished status, we will change it back to do. Let's add a click event on our status. We will put the status inside the span tag, and we'll add a click event on our span. But before we do that, let's just quickly change the cursor to pointer so the user knows the status is clickable. Cool. Let's go up and add a click event. And we will call a method named change status, and we'll pass the index as an argument to our method. Let's create this method. So to update the status, we need to figure out what should be the next value of the task status. For this, we're going to use the available statuses array. Basically, we will find the index of our current status inside available statuses, and we will increment it. And if it's bigger than 2, we will set it back to 0. The idea is to loop over the available statuses on each click. So like this, we will find the current index, and after we increment the current index, we will get our new index. So let's increment the value of new index and check if it's bigger than 2, and if that returns true, we will set it to 0. And now we can change the task status like this. Let's test it out. Fantastic. Let me just change the column width to 120 pixels so it does not resize on status change. Cool. Now what I want to do is transform the first letter from our status to uppercase. For this we can create a function first_upper and we'll pass the status as an argument. And let's create this method. We want to get the first character of the string and transform it to uppercase, and then just join the first letter and the rest of the string. I've actually made a mistake here. The function name is actually to uppercase, but fortunately we don't have to rename the function names because we can always Google them and find the function name in less than 10 seconds. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Change the function to uppercase and boom, the first character has been transformed to uppercase. And the last thing I want to show you guys is how to bind CSS classes. For that we can add a line through text decoration to our task name when the status is finished. So let's create the class. I'll name the class finished and add a text decoration line through. Let's just put our task name inside a span tag. And to bind our class, we just put colon before the class, and now inside the class we will create an object. Each property of this object will be class name, and each value of the property should be a boolean indicating if the class name should be used or not. Let's add the finished class, which has a line through text decoration, and we only want to use this class if the status of our task is equal to finished. Let's test this out. So as you can see, when the status is equal to finished, our task name has a line through text decoration. Let's just add a few more conditional classes to make this look more interesting. This time we'll bind a class to our status span tag, and if the status is to do, make the text red. If the status is in progress, make the text yellow. And finally, if the status is finished, make the text green. Alright guys, that's all for today's video. I hope you've learned a thing or two about Vue JS. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.